Nearly $15 million of your taxpayer dollars were just handed out by Donald Trump to paint the iconic Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool blue for a 4th of July bash. But here is where the story goes off the rails. The massive payday went to a company with absolutely zero prior federal contracting experience. In fact, when grilled before Congress yesterday, Interior Secretary Doug Burgum admitted he hadn't even heard of them. This goes far beyond a simple embarrassment. The administration fast-tracked this $15 million payout using a highly questionable legal loophole, one that a leading expert in contracting law states the government flat-out does not have the authority to use. Watch the exact moment Congressman Joe Neguse forces Secretary Burgum to answer for this on the record.
Gentlemen, as time has expired, the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Neguse, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here today. I want to start first with a letter that myself and Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado wrote to your agency on April 29th. This was a letter of April 29th of this year in regards to the historically low snowpack that we're experiencing, as you know, in the Rocky Mountain West, including in Colorado. Obviously, very concerned about the wildfire season that is upon us. The letter makes a number of requests around pre-positioning assets, extending federal contracts for aerial resources. I would just ask for your commitment to respond to that letter, if you might be willing to make that commitment.
Yeah, absolutely, and appreciate your attention to this. We are facing a potentially a dangerous situation with the low water levels in the Colorado River Basin relative to wildfire, and that's why, again, we appreciate all the support we can get from you in unifying the new U.S. Wildland Firefighting Group. That's going to allow us to have essentially a joint chiefs of staff that can make the command and control decisions that you're asking us to look at.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And we look forward to your response on that front. I want to follow up on a point that the ranking member referenced. This is in regards to a decision that your agency made last year in December. As you know, removing the 2 federal holidays that honor Black history from the free entrance day list for the National Park Service. You're familiar with that decision?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I believe those 2 days, by the way, are Martin Luther King Day, as you know, and Juneteenth. It's my view that Juneteenth provides all citizens with an opportunity to really recommit ourselves, renew our commitment to equality. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess part of my confusion about why, given your agreement on that front, given the fact that as governor, you proclaimed Juneteenth back in North Dakota several years ago, why you would now allow the agency, or I presume you were involved in that decision, to remove those 2 holidays from the list. It just strikes me that that is not consistent with the view that you just articulated. And I would urge the National Park Service to reverse that decision. I think it is short-sighted, and I don't think it's in the best interest of the country. I recognize my colleagues disagree with me on the other side of the aisle, perhaps some of them, but that's my view. I want to ask you about one last topic.
Can I just say, I want to make sure on that,
sure.
topic that we understand that no one is changing these holidays, the holiday designation, whatever. There was an ability to choose free days, and part of that was, where do we space the free days? Where do we put them? Do they match up against weekends?
Yeah, but Mr. Secretary,
and again, trying to get more of those days into the summer months when we have higher visitation.
I hear you. At the same time, I think you could understand how many Americans would perceive a decision by your department to remove Martin Luther King Day as a free entrance day, the National Park Service. I just, at the end of the day, again, we'll have to agree to disagree on that front, but I will move on. Are you familiar with Atlantic Industrial Coatings?
I'm not familiar with that.
So Atlantic Industrial Coatings is a company. Are you familiar with that company?
You're saying Atlantic?
Atlantic Industrial Coatings, correct? Are you familiar with it, or?
I'm not familiar with Atlantic.
Okay, Atlantic Industrial Coatings is the company that received a no-bid federal contract for the project at the Lincoln Memorial Reflective Pool. Are you familiar with that now?
I'm familiar with that project, yes.
But not the company?
I wasn't familiar with that specific name of the company.
Okay. You're familiar with the fact that a company received a no-bid contract to do the work on that project, correct?
I'm familiar that we're working on a project to restore the reflecting pool before the summer season with record attendance, yes.
Yes, and that was through a no-bid $13 million contract, right? That's not up for debate. That's a fact.
I'm positive that we followed all of the required bidding rules. So you're
Well, let me ask you that
you're
question.
emphasizing the word no bid like something nefarious has happened.
Okay,
and
then
I reject
explain
that
it to me.
thesis.
Here, I'll ask you the question. My understanding of the federal procurement rules is that a no-bid contract is reserved for situations where, quote, any delay would cause serious injury to the government. What is your proposition is what? That there'd be serious injury to the government if this company didn't get the $13 million contract to do this particular project right now? Is that?
Well, I think we do have a sense of urgency. I mean, we got handed a record amount of deferred maintenance. We had 19 fountains across the city that didn't work.
That's the
82 homeless
serious
sites,
injury to
1,000
the government? The serious injury to the government?
Well, I suppose a lawyer could decide that, but I think that maybe all of us could agree that we would want to have our nation's capital looking great for the 250th. I mean, this is a common sense decision.
I would say, just last question, who picked this company? Because President Trump, a few months ago, in a New York Times article said, I have a guy who's unbelievable at doing swimming pools. He looked at it, he called me up, he said, sir, we can do something on it. Last night, he posted on Truth Social, also, I did not give out the contract, Interior did, to a contractor I did not know and have never used before. So Interior, he's talking about you. Did you give this $13 million no-bid contract to this company that's never done business with the federal government before?
The gentleman's time has expired.
I think the secretary can answer the question.
The gentleman that you're talking about that has done construction work regarding pools and fountains for President Trump is not part of this contract. He's just a citizen that cared about it and offered some free advice. There's nothing there in terms of any dollars flowing to anybody that worked for President Trump.
Who picked this company? That's what I'm getting at.
The National Park Service and the leaders on the National Mall are the ones that picked it. They went through the process, picked the person that was best, and part of their selection process was picking somebody who had the capability to complete the project in a time frame and in a budget that would actually fix the problem. I mean, there are past presidents that have worked on this thing. It's been shut for 2 years. Read the article. There was $38 million spent on this between 2010 and 2012, and it was never fixed. I mean, this is
we're going to move on, and some of these questions, if you want to refer or answer them in writing when there's more time.
Okay, let's talk about the money, because his answer doesn't tell you the half of it. When Donald Trump told the public about this project on April 23rd, he told reporters it would run somewhere between $1.5 and $1.8 million. He actually gave different numbers in the same public statement. But here's what he didn't mention. The job had already been given out. The National Park Service handed Atlantic Industrial Coatings $6.9 million before he'd made a single public statement about the project. Then on May 8th, the Interior Department quietly added another $6.2 million to that same contract. That brings the total for Atlantic alone to $13.1 million, and the bill goes higher. A second no-bid contract, $1.74 million, went to an Ohio company called Green Water Services for the pool's water cleaning system. Using the same emergency reason, we're now close to $15 million in total. That's somewhere between 7 and 10 times what the president told the American people this would cost, depending on which of his own numbers you use. Now let's talk about the company that got $13 million of that, because what he left out when he defended it is that Atlantic Industrial Coatings doesn't even say it specializes in swimming pools. Their own website describes the company's work as making drainage tunnels, waterproof pipes, roofs, and tanks used to store chemicals. The New York Times looked for proof that this company had worked at Trump's golf club in Sterling, Virginia, which is exactly what the president said publicly. They couldn't find any. One of the company's owners was asked directly. His response, I'm not at liberty to discuss that. Federal contract records show this company had no government contracts, none before April of this year. And rather than explain why they were qualified for one of the most visible jobs in the country, they declined to answer. Think about that. A company with no federal contracting history, no proven experience with this kind of work, just received $13.1 million in public money for the most well-known public landmark in Washington, D.C. Here's how they made it happen. The administration used what is called an urgency exemption. a special legal exception that allows the government to avoid letting companies compete for the job when a delay would cause what the law calls serious harm. But don't take my word for what that rule requires. Take his own answer. When NIG pressed him directly on whether this project actually met the legal requirement, he answered, "I suppose a lawyer could decide that." That was the entire defense. The man in charge of this department, the one who approved this contract, acknowledged on the record that he wasn't even sure his own legal reason would survive a legal challenge. That answer is now in the official record of Congress permanently. And here's why that matters so much more than it might seem. During those same official answers, Neguse pressed him about a letter from lawmakers in both parties written with Colorado Senator Michael Bennet about very low mountain snow levels across the Rocky Mountain West and a dangerous coming wildfire season. That letter requested having firefighting planes ready ahead of time and longer contracts for firefighting aircraft. It was about protecting human lives. And what did that request get? A spoken promise to reply in writing. Let that sit for a second. A pool repair, mostly about appearance, with a deadline connected to a party, was treated as urgent enough to skip open competition. A request from lawmakers in both parties about recorded fire danger to people's lives got a promise to send a letter back. That's what the administration treats as urgent. Jessica Tillman, a contracting law professor at George Washington University, put it precisely, "The government cannot create its own urgency." In the entire decade before this administration's second term, the Park Service used that exception in less than 1% of its contract spending. Less than 1%. This administration has now used it repeatedly, month after month, for pool paint and fountain repairs. The hearing and the news coverage after it still left one question unanswered. The job was given out on April 3rd. Trump said nothing publicly about this project for 20 more days. Then he publicly described the company doing the job as someone who came to him personally, someone connected to companies that had worked at his private properties, and said he directed the job to them. That's what he said, publicly recorded, after the deal was already done. Then the New York Times investigation came out, and suddenly the story changed completely on Truth Social. He claimed he had nothing to do with it, said he didn't know the contractor, said Interior made the call. Both of those statements are now in the public record at the same time. And here's the problem that cannot be ignored. One of them is false. If the Oval Office version was false, if he really had no role, then the President of the U.S. made up a story about having a role in a federal contract he never touched. If the true social version is false, if he did direct it, then his official answers to Congress that the Park Service chose the company on its own directly go against the President's recorded public statement. There is no reading of events in which both are true, and nobody has explained which version is true. Now look beyond the contracts for a moment, because there's something important about what's actually being done here and why it matters beyond the money. The Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool has been central to the National Mall since 1922. Its size makes the change impossible to dismiss. Those dozens of special construction joints are the reason it has always been likely to leak. But the dark gray color was part of the pool's historic design. That was done on purpose. The 1,999 National Park Service Cultural Landscape Report called it a key feature that helped define the historic place and gave the pool its historic identity. The dark color was central to what made it the reflecting pool. It is tied to some of the most important moments in American history. What's replacing it? A coating the president personally selected and then celebrated online changes the basic purpose and meaning of this place, and the fix is expected to fail. Park Service documents obtained by the New York Times said officials predicted these repairs would last 7 to 10 years. 7 to 10 years, while Trump told reporters publicly the fix would last 50. But it gets worse. This project only deals with one of the 3 problems the Park Service itself found. Atlantic Industrial Coatings was hired to seal the joints again and make the concrete slabs waterproof. Green Water Services handles the water cleaning system. And the 3rd problem, 2 miles of broken or failing pipes underground, remains untouched. Here's the detail that didn't come up in the hearing. That 3-task repair plan was drafted in 2019. During Trump's first term, his own Park Service documented all 3 problems, made an official plan, and then did nothing with it for more than 6 years. And the defense he offered, that earlier administrations wasted money without fixing the pool, includes a mistake about the facts. He told Congress, the Obama renovation costs $38 million. The official number confirmed by the Department of Interior's own official recovery records and the Associated Press is $34 million. He said the earlier administration spent more than it did by $4 million in the same hearing, where he was defending a contract that grew from $1.8 million to $15 million while he was in charge. And now there is a court case. On May 11th, the Cultural Landscape Foundation filed a case in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, asking for an emergency court order to stop the project immediately. The lawsuit claims the administration broke two federal laws, the National Historic Preservation Act and the National Environmental Policy Act, by moving forward without telling the public, without checking with other federal agencies, and without letting the public comment at all. The legal complaint claims that no groups or people who are supposed to be included have been told, included, or given a chance to take part. As of May 8th, the Associated Press confirmed the work was still continuing. The case landed with Judge Carl Nichols, a judge appointed by Trump, who has handled other court challenges against this administration's actions. And importantly, the lawsuit treats this as part of a repeated pattern. The court filing claims this is part of a repeated pattern shown most clearly by the rush to destroy the East Wing of the White House, in which this administration knowingly ignores legal limits set by Congress. The record backs that up. This spring alone, he paved over the White House Rose Garden without the approvals that were required. He added a 13-foot Columbus statue to the White House complex without submitting a plan to any review board. He tore down the historic East Wing without checking with a board that protects historic places. Tim Whitehouse, executive director of the government watchdog group Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility, described this as a secretive pattern where the president's friends and business partners are rewarded without public review. So let's look at the bigger picture, because each contract only shows part of the story. 3 urgency exemptions, 3 repair projects at famous Washington landmark. At least 2 of those contracts went to companies, the president said publicly, were connected to him, Atlantic Industrial Coatings, which he personally claimed had worked at his properties, and the Lafayette Park fountain contractor, which the New York Times connected to the same company building his White House ballroom. The third, Greenwater Services, was given out using the same exception, though no connection to the president has been reported. Every single time, the same special legal exception was used to skip the process federal law requires, where companies compete for the job. That's a pattern, and patterns mean something. Now here's the other story from that same hearing that received less attention than the contract fight, and it deserves just as much attention. The administration announced last November that Martin Luther King Jr. Day and Juneteenth would be removed from the national park's free entry calendar for 2026. Both remain official federal holidays. Both are simply no longer days when Americans get free access to their own national parks. And what replaced them? According to the National Park Service's own website, verified directly, Flag Day was added to the 2026 calendar with an explicit designation: President Trump's birthday. There is no record of any sitting president ever having their own birthday designated as a federal recreation benefit day while still in office. That's a documented historical first. MLK Day had been on that free entry list since 2011, 15 straight years. Juneteenth was added in 2024, kept in 2025, and cut entirely for 2026. And the administration's explanation that it was about spacing and maximizing summer visitation implies someone ran an analysis. That analysis hasn't been produced publicly. Under what method does June 14th beat the third Monday of January for a summer visitation calendar? No one has answered that. The exact conflict Neguse pointed out turns this into a direct contradiction. In June 2020, the same official made a statement as governor of North Dakota recognizing Juneteenth. In April 2021, he signed legislation making it a day recognized by the state. His official statement at the time called on all Americans to acknowledge a tragic period of injustice and inequality in our history, and said, "We all benefit from a greater understanding and appreciation of different life experiences." That statement is still on the North Dakota governor's official website 5 years later. Neguse told him directly that his position now did not match the view he had just expressed publicly. He didn't push back on that. He changed the subject. 2 of his own formal records now sit in direct contradiction: a state legislative record honoring Juneteenth and a calendar from a federal department that leaves it out. Both are in the public record, and they contradict each other. Put those 2 stories together, and the pattern becomes clear. The administration removed the 2 federal holidays honoring Black history from the National Parks calendar and put the president's own birthday in their place. At the same time, it sent nearly $15 million through contracts with no open competition, through an emergency exception that was rarely used before this administration, to contractors, including at least one company the president publicly described as connected to his own properties, to greatly change the historic meaning and look of the most significant public landmark in Washington, without any public review, without the legally required consultation, and without letting companies compete for the job. The basic facts are documented. The repeated pattern is the point. The contracts are in the federal record. The calendar is on the government's own website. The lawsuit is in federal court. The president's own words are recorded. The record supports the point directly. There's one point I want to leave you with. For over a century, the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool carried a clear historic meaning, reflection. On August 28th, 1963, about 250,000 people heard Dr. King deliver "I Have a Dream" at the Lincoln Memorial. That's what this place is. That's what it has always been. And in the spring of 2026, the administration that removed Dr. King's holiday from the National Parks calendar is painting that pool blue without historic review, public comment, or open competition, with a coating that the Park Service's own internal documents, as reported by the New York Times, predict will last 7 to 10 years. This fight reveals the administration's priorities right now. The record shows this administration exactly as it is, fully backed by records obvious to everyone, and completely in the official record. Okay, guys, politics moves fast, and there's always another angle to break down. Before you go, leave your thoughts below, and tell me what side of this you're on. Help the channel grow by giving this video a like if you found it worth your time. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update, reaction, or debate. Subscribe if you want a place where political topics get talked about directly. Thanks for being here, and I'll catch you on the next video.